Welcome to the OK Book Club. This is the book, The War That Saved My Life by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. And in this episode, we're going back. It's a retrospective episode looking at everything, best moment, worst moments, all the categories that we can think of, basically to celebrate the book, criticize the book. And yes, let's just get started right away. What do I want to talk about? I want to zoom in, but from 20,000 feet. So let's look at it big picture, first of all. I've talked about this throughout the podcast. There's beginnings, there's middles, there's end. And I'm sorry, but if you don't grab me right up front, I've said it many times, I'm not reading your book. I don't care how great supposedly it is. And this book is the definition of grabbing you right from the beginning. And the ending could not be better. But there's the middle that will constantly talk about this episode. Listen, as I look back on it and reflect on it after a few days, it was just too tedious throughout the book. As much as you're rooting for the character Ada, and you are able to turn the pages based on the author's ability to just really interest you whenever you're finding yourself bored. And realistically, when I say that I'm bored, I'm talking 2-3 pages at the most, because then something else happens, whether it's Susan going in and confronting Jamie's teacher, Christmas Eve, and then little tiny moments that throughout the middle of the book, whether it's going to see the doctor for Ada's clubfoot, Jamie throwing food, Maggie getting injured, just so much of this that you're interested and you want to continue reading. That's the brilliance of the author. But looking at it from a big picture, this took too long and it began to get really tedious. We understood what was going on with Ada and her flashbacks and the awful things that her mother did to her. But at a certain point, the reader gets it, and it just became too much. Over and over the same calisthenics that she was doing in her head. But through the brilliance of the author, we were still captivated, in my opinion. Overall, I'll give it a very high rating. One of the top 20 books I've ever read, 4.5. And listen, criticisms about the book, I think most people would agree. It really is a shame that we didn't learn a lot more about the war. I get it that the author had a specific time period in here and she focused on the events within a year? We learned a lot about Dunkirk, and we learned a lot about how people were surviving the war and what they had to go through in terms of rationing, in terms of evacuations. And yes, it was specifically about this time period. But in terms of the action adventure, this is my big point. This is my big criticism of the book. As fantastic as the last 25 pages were, that's 25 pages out of 315. Are you kidding me? If you add in then, let's say the first, maybe 40 pages or so, just off the top of my head, that's really in terms of action and adventure and just really engaging reading where it's impossible for you to put it down. We're talking, 70 pages at the most? And the rest is, Ada and, the problems that she was going through in her head with her brother, which granted were very interesting to follow. And I wouldn't be talking about this book if it wasn't really well written and I really didn't like it. But talk about it being, there's an opportunity lost, in my opinion. Again, I've gone over this so many times. It's like these authors and these publishers just think that you need to write at least 200 pages or more, right? So Anyway, if the action and adventure, the details behind the war, the information they could have given us, stretch it out, have a lot more of that be in the middle of the book, you'll never, if you read this book, you'll never forget it. And before we get into the nitty-gritties of the awards that I'll give out for the books, highs and lows, I want to give a shout out to one family and their daughter. When we were looking at reading another book, they really enjoyed this particular book by Alan Gratz called Resist, about Normandy and D-Day. And we had read Number the Stars together. That, was great, which will be the focus of a future episode. A great historical novel, one of the most celebrated of all time. So this student and this family, they wanted to read another historical fiction book. And they picked this one. And I looked at it, like 315 pages. I don't know. But listen, so much. I am a better reader. I am a better person having read this book, and I cannot thank this family enough. So on to the awards for the book. The Mount Rushmore best moments of the book, and it's interesting as you go through here. This is about memorable, so it's not going to be sunshine and roses sometimes, but with leaving this book, what moments will you remember the most? So we'll start off with the tie for number 4. And, this clearly comes under the category of not a feel-good moments. You cannot, tied for number 4, starting off is that first chapter or 2 when the mother, the treatment that Ada got, and you immediately fall in love with Ada to try to get out of this horrible situation she has. You just cannot believe that a mother can be this horrible. Locked into the cabinet below the sink. Are you kidding me? And then on page, tied for the 4th, again, most memorable moment, we'll call it. When I can't say the word best with how horrible these parts of the book were. But on page 306, when her mother, Ada's mother, basically comes out and says, I had to pay for you. That's why I came back to get you. The end of the book. She took her purse and her hat. She turned back to look at me. I can get rid of you without paying anything? I nodded. She grinned. It was her stuffing Ada into the cabinet grin. Is that a promise? She said. All of my life I would remember those words. I said yes. Horrible, but you can't forget it. Number 3, most memorable moment, it has to be Christmas Eve. It's just shattering, heartbreaking, and it comes to a head in terms of everything that Ada had to deal with her previous life. The second most memorable moment in the book, she finds the spy, she goes to the police, and the policeman at the counter is mocking her. Oh, on your pony, said the man, nodding, his smile widening into a smirk. Watch a lot of newsreels, do you? Listen to the scary stories on the radio, do you? He thought I was lying, or at best exaggerating, and now he was staring at my bad foot again. I felt a wave of heat climb up my neck. I thought of what Susan would do. I drew myself up, taller, and glared at the man, and I said, my bad foot's a long way from my brain. Yes, that's going to be the best line in the book. I'm giving it away already. Second best moment in the book. The best moment, and any book you want to read that you're going to love, you're hoping that it's the end. And yes, the very end of the book, the last paragraph, everything comes to a head. It's solidified that Ada loves Susan. It's just a fantastic moment. And here, verbatim, is what happened. They came back, and as horrible as what they've just realized that their house is now gone, what Jamie and Ada and Susan realize is that everyone, despite the horror of what happened to their house, everyone is overjoyed and comes over to them and laughing and screaming and just so happy because they thought they were looking for them in the rubble. They thought that they had lost them, right? Then Susan put her arms around Jamie and looked directly at me. Ada. She looked at Ada. "It's lucky I went after you," said Susan. "The two of you saved my life, you did." I slipped my hand into hers. A strange and unfamiliar feeling ran through me. It felt like the ocean. It felt like the sunlight, like horses, like love. I searched my mind and found the name for it, joy. "So now we're even," I said. Listen, it's one man's opinion, but I challenge anybody to tell me that there is not a better moment in this book. And that, like I said, is what you want. The very end of the book is the best moment. Worst moments, and again, there's a qualification here. It's not about necessarily, it's more unmemorable moments. And the sign that this is a great book is I couldn't find too many. I went back searching through the book, and there was maybe 3 or 4 times where I skipped ahead, read really quickly, and these were the moments. There was a few that I can remember. Susan's teaching Ada how to sew. Ada's out there with Mr. Grimes learning how to ride a horse. When she was out there talking with Maggie. I mean, again, didn't address or didn't follow through on the narrative, but thankfully those were only 2 or 3 pages in length. Best character, no doubts. I don't even need to talk about it. Ada. Best supporting character, again, no doubts. Susan Smith. Worst character, I don't even need to tell you, ma'am. And character that you really wanted to know more about, that could almost have its own book. I'm going to go with Lady Thornton. She, the iron-faced woman, she clearly had a good heart as much as she was put in a situation where she had a job to do, but she looked out. She looked out for Ada and Jamie. We don't have a category for if this book deserves a sequel, because there is a sequel, but how about a prequel? And I'm gonna do right here another category, a hot take. I just think it's so unrealistic. Again, maybe I'm a boomer, meaning I was born after World War II, and I just cannot understand how a mother can be that evil and that mean. And maybe back in the day, families and children and their parents, they just didn't have the same relationship that, the past few generations have. And maybe I just can't understand that, but I just still think it's unrealistic. So the hot take, and clearly I can't imagine that this is a popular take, but what about a prequel about Ma'am and her husband? It can't be a kid's book. It would have to be a young adult, even adult book. But because this book has been so celebrated, can we put some type of spin? And I don't even know if we want to put a spin, like I said, but can there be some understanding of why Ma'am was the way she was? Done in the right hands with the right author, it could be amazing. Is this book rereadable? And I'll tell you what, as I've really thought about this, I would not read this book again. Certainly, I intentionally, because my memory's not too good, I'm going to intentionally write down and go back to this podcast so I can remember about this book. But would I reread the parts that talked about how families were impacted by World War II? Yes. But the books that are rereadable are more like mysteries. and where you miss certain things. I don't know if I wouldn't want to go through the calisthenics that Ada had in her head about what she had experienced earlier in her life. There's just no way it would be good. Nitpick awards. Number 1, Jamie. He is not that smart as he appeared in the book. He can't be. He's not even in kindergarten yet. He just seemed to have a sense of what was going on throughout the book. And if you didn't know, no way you would say this kid is 4.5 years old. Nitpick number 2, I've gone over it so often, is ma'am cannot be that horrible of a person. Nitpick number 3, I talked about this. Susan comes back in the ruins of a city that was just bombed, and they're sitting down in a restaurant having tea. I get it. Throughout the whole book, everyone's having tea, but I don't know. It just can't be. And plus, it just didn't. In that moment, the author should have had the setting around them be more descriptive of pain and destruction and everything. It just bad moment by Miss Bradley. One of the very few moments I can criticize her. What was the edge of your seat, most suspenseful moment? It was a short moment, but it was few pages, and the spy, when Ada was able to not only see the spy, go to the police, and this was not only the most suspenseful moment, but it was the moment you knew Ada was going to be okay. She had moved from before Dunkirk to after Dunkirk. She had moved to before her mother to after her mother. She was going to be okay. The best stand up and cheer for her character moment, go Susan Smith. When she walked into the school, didn't go to any principal, didn't go to any secretary, just barged right into the classroom. Back then, I'm sure you could do it, right? But certainly today, no. You can't even get into a building today. But of course, she confronted the teacher, and Ada saw all of it. This was the moment you know that Jamie began to love Susan. Just a wonderful moment. And that leads us to the most despicable character. Yes, by far that teacher. Because you're left-handed, that's a sign that the devil has infected you? Come on. Close second for the most despicable character. Stephen Smith's mother. When they met, I believe it was in the community at the food market, just the way she put down Ada. I didn't understand that, right? And talk about, again, characters that we wanted to know more about that. How could Stephen White be so wonderful? He piggybacked Ada to the train station. What a great character he was. But then how can that be reconciled with his mother being so mean to Ada? I would love to have learned more about those two. What piece of memorabilia would you take from this book? And this is actually a physical object. And what's interesting about this book, because they were so poor, and certainly, at the end when everything was destroyed in Susan Smith's house, there's not much here at all. The only things I could think of was maybe Butter's bridle, Ada's green dress, the books, maybe Alice in Wonderland, Ada's book that she started enjoying, and Jamie's book that he loved, the Swiss Family Robinson book. But unless you have other ideas, and again, KEVMOK21@gmail.com, send me your thoughts, send me your disagreements. But I can't think of anything. Maybe there's something out there. Wait, I remembered something. Absolutely, I got it. They're birth certificates. Amy and Jamie's birth certificates. That's a good one. Here's a great discussion question. Who is more important, Bovril or Butter? From this perspective, who is more important, Bovril to Jamie or Butter to Ada? It's a squeaker, but you have to give the relationship with Butter and Ada. specifically because the author always mentioned that when anything tough was happening in Aya's life, she would always go to riding butter in her head. But Bovril's effect on Jamie was just as important, no question. What do we learn from this book in terms of historical significance? Clearly Dunkirk. Strafed, this word strafed, which was basically means bombing from above. We were being strafed. Never heard that word in my life. The Anderson shelters and how important they were to so many people in Britain when they were being bombed. And ultimately, the story as a whole regarding the evacuation of children, which is the future of Great Britain, right? The evacuation of children during this Blitz and the Battle of Britain to get them out of the city. And finally, the staples in terms of food and what was rationed. I thought it was interesting that potatoes continued to be the food that ultimately still were in abundance and people ate, and onions that end up becoming so scarce. And the biggest one and the most obvious one is club feet. Understanding about how common it was in previous generations and even today, but it's clearly with medicine and surgery, it's something that you don't see at all anymore because it is corrected at birth. And finally, the fascination about double agents and what they actually did regarding this particular spy burying the communication equipment. How was it that you were able to, during this time period, get information to, across enemy lines? And they didn't go into a lot of details about this, but certainly it was fascinating and something you could further look up. And two more final categories. One, going with the author, the most effective writing technique by this particular author. When you italicize words, you're stressing words so the reader understands that what the character is saying in this moment or thinking in this moment is really important. So on page 173, she did it twice. And that is, so I can stay, so I can stay, so I can stay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times Ada said this in her mind, and it was written on the page, italicized, but there's no spaces between the words. So I can stay, so I can stay, so I can stay. OMG, talk about the emotions overflowing. And then she did it at the bottom of the page. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. Really well done. And let's talk about different editions of the book, and specifically the covers of the book. I haven't talked about this in previous retrospective episodes, or if ever. The second edition of the book, the cover is so much better. And maybe it's just me. I don't know why I would have this hang up at my age, but if I'm walking around a book, I want the cover to be good. And you can sense the action and the thrill of this book with Ada. You can see her clubfoot. You can see her anxiety with a plane roaring overhead, whereas the first edition of the book, it's just her, and it's almost like as if it's a cartoon character of her looking over the scenery, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's just not indicative of everything that this book was able to deliver in terms of how you read it. So ultimately, the second edition of books always come out usually with different covers. And in this case, it was because after winning the Newbery Honor Award, the second edition came out. So all in all, kudos to Kimberly Brubaker Bradley and The War That Saved My Life. Great in the beginning, great at the end. Let's say very good throughout the middle. It could have been so much better. But nevertheless, this has been the OK Book Club, another retrospective on this great book. Happy reading, my friends, and we'll see you next time.